So, all right, let's go to our number 19 team in the country. That is the UNC Tar Heels. Man, Fresh. Depends on who you talk to on the Tar Heels. Drake May and the Tar Heels are coming off of a good year. I don't know if I want to call it a great year that they're coming off of here. I'd be pretty happy if I was a Tar Heel fan. The only thing that makes it tough for me coming into this is that loss at the end of the season to wrap it up. I know that you're playing only in the Holiday Bowl against Oregon, losing 28-27 in that game. That was a rough back and forth game. That was one of those games that Oregon, you shouldn't have lost to Oregon in that game, going back to that Holiday Bowl. The Tar Heels schedule, too, is brutal, especially in the first 4 weeks of the season. And it doesn't really it gets easier on the back half, but then you end the season with a really tough schedule. This is just their first 4 weeks, ladies and gentlemen. They start neutral stadium against South Carolina. South Carolina, we have them at 23. You play App State. App State's always going to be upset-minded there. You got Minnesota coming into town. You know, depending on what you think about Minnesota, that could be a tough game. And then you have to travel to Pittsburgh week 4 as well. That's a tough way to start the season for the Tar Heels. But, again, Drake May, possible Heisman candidate there, Fresh. So talk to me a little bit. What are you seeing with UNC?
Well, I think you brought up a really is the win total actually good for North Carolina football? Is that actually how do fans actually see it? Oh, that's actually successful. We're winning ball games. And you kind of look, the way I kind of initially looked at it was they just feel like they're just short of being that quote unquote great team. They're always they're good, but they haven't had that great season yet. They'll get their 8 wins or whatever, but that dominant win. And you kind of look back at 2020, they went 8-3, went to the Orange Bowl, which is a New Year's Six bowl, and it felt like a 10-1 season to Carolina fans. Okay, we're going to the Orange Bowl. Then they got blown out by Texas A&M, which getting blown out by A&M in 2020, that says a lot about that team. 2021, you kind of thought, all right, Sam Howell's going to take this team to the next level. They're going there. Got high-flying offense, but abysmal defense. 3 one-score losses, as well as a 23-point loss to Georgia Tech. They found up them 6-7. If they had won those 1-point games or even showed up against Tech, that's 4 more wins that are flipped the other side. That's a 9-10 win season. How close could they have been there? And then 2022, they ended the year with 4 straight losses, 3 of which were by single digits, including that 1-point loss to Oregon. They were 9-1 after beating Wake Forest on November 12th. 9-1, and they couldn't win the game the rest of the year. It's just they feel like they haven't fully broken through. And is it part of the quarterback play? Is it the defense? Is it the team in general? Is it where's that item that's just not kicking into the next side? And you mentioned it earlier there with the toughest 4-game schedule. I think they have the toughest first 6 games because then you add on, they have Syracuse and Miami. Now, Syracuse and Miami are world beaters, but when you look at the first 6 games of playing legit teams, the first 6 games of the year, you have no break. They've got to be ready to play because they have tripped up in the past against other teams. They've got to be able to show up. They can have their season over by the middle of October. That's where it falls on Drake May, which is a lot of pressure for the kid. You have no more Phil Longo. You have no more Josh Downs. So your offense, now your voice in your head, your signals from the side, that's changing. Your go-to receiver, that's changing. How does he mature as a quarterback and as a leader of this football team to understand, I've got to be able to score, I've got to be able to smart, I don't know what this defense is going to give me, I've got to find a way to gel with my team immediately and get us cooking right off the bat. You do gain transfer wide receiver Devontae Walker. That should be able to give them a nice little boost. They still have to develop the rapport. But you have also the second best offense in the ACC, second best passing attack. That's a standard you have to live up to now because the conference it's probably not as good as it was last year or the year before, but you still have to show up and win it. Florida State's going to be much better. Clemson's going to be good. You've got to be ready to play. You cannot blow an opportunity. You're not also going to be given a gift of potentially having two separate divisions in the conference. It's the 2 best records make it. So that opportunity now is going to be even tougher to get to Charlotte and play for a championship. You've got to be ready to go. We looked at last year in the opener versus App State. They should have blown them out. They let App State storm back. They almost lost the game 3 different times. That's a problem right there from a top-down issue, in my opinion, of not having the team fully ready to play. And sometimes we got to look at Mac Brown as the head coach. Mac, you've done good at North Carolina in your return stint, but the team has not shown up in games. They faltered down the stretch. They faltered in moments they shouldn't. And that kind of eventually, at some point, has got to reflect on you. Are you just the older coach who's come back to try to be the figurehead, or are you actually challenging these players and challenging your coaches to be better? You have talent. You've recruited really well. But one thing you haven't done is lock down recruiting-wise in the state of North Carolina. Jordan Davis is from North Carolina. He didn't go to North Carolina. There's a lot of players in North Carolina that didn't go to North Carolina that went up to other schools and become studs, and they got drafted, gone to the NFL. You have not locked down your own state recruiting-wise, and you're getting the second-rate guys, and you aren't really developing them at the full rate you should, especially on defense. You've got to be able to change that mentality and get back to North Carolina football of winning and dominating and using athletes. Where's the Julius Pepper days? Those days need to come back. This is going to be a big year also for his defense coordinator, Gene Chizik. Gene's famous for winning at Auburn, winning a national title. He won a lot because of Cam Newton and everybody else, but he's really a defensive guy. What's he going to be able to do? Last year, they gave up 31 points a game, dead last in the ACC. They gave up 438 yards a game, dead last in the ACC. Only 16 teams in the country gave up more yards per game than North Carolina. They gave up 276 yards passing a game, dead last in the ACC, and only 10 teams were worse than them in the nation. They were horrible in defense, and he was supposed to come in the year and change the defense from the year before. If they aren't improving, when does he get put on the chopping block? Where is this team going? Where is this organizational structure? It cannot all fall on your quarterback. If you have the window right now to win, you've got to find a way to maximize it. The schedule's tough. The turnover ratio last year was terrible. They were at 0. They had 9 interceptions and 5 fumbles recovered. As a defense, you've got to force more turnovers if you're not stopping anybody, and they weren't even doing that. Offense, obviously, if you look at that, it's only 14 turnovers. They weren't giving up the football much, but the defense wasn't taking it away either. This team needs a holistic – there's too much talent on it. They need a holistic come to whatever moment you want to call it, and figure out ways to win football games ugly if they have to. Sometimes the flashy offense masks the team itself, and it looks too pretty on the outside, but the integrity of it, they're not getting the job done in the big games when it matters. And that's going to come this year. Is this team truly legit? Is Mac Brown and that coaching staff truly legit? Is Drake May truly legit? Number one, he also has draft stock weighing on his shoulders. If he shows up, that might boost his draft stock. If he stinks, that might ruin him. He's got to be able to make it happen, but not put it all on his shoulders. Guys have got to step up and help him. The final 3-game stretch, you mentioned earlier also, Duke, Clemson, and NC State. They have a bucket end of tough and tough. How do they find ways to navigate this schedule and come out? The ceiling for them, I think, is 10-2, but the floor, 7-5. I mean, they could really bottom out and just struggle to get through. A lot of things can happen in this football team. It's going to come down to what's between the ears and them improving in all facets and gelling quickly. They just need to be focused right off the bat, and they cannot get a slow start like they had last year, or they're going to be in serious trouble. And Mac Brown's legacy also might be in serious trouble.
Yeah, Fresh, this team scares me because it can go one of two ways here. Let's say everything gels together. You take a look at what North Carolina had last year with this team, and if Elijah Green picks up, kind of adds to where he is, takes off some of the burden, or Drake May is not the rusher he was during last season there. Elijah Green had a nice season to build upon as well. And then, I know you lose Josh Downs, and he's gone off to NFL, one of the better receivers. We really liked Josh Downs all last season. We thought he was highly underrated. But Bryson Nesbitt, tight end in North Carolina, he's been there with Drake May now for 2 years. Can that chemistry, especially in the red zone, can you put up the points to really take the pressure off of your defense there? Because for me, this defense needs to just create more pressure than what they did. 17 sacks on the season last year. That needs to increase. You take a look at them. They only had 9 interceptions. They only recovered 5 fumbles. They need something more. They need something more to be a difference maker going into this season. You want to talk about all of these things about legacy and where they're going within the ACC. This could be where we really start to have the conversation. Did the ACC pass Mac Brown by? And as college football started to pass Mac Brown by, oldest coach in college football right now, I believe. If not, he's number 2 with Saban. Fresh. I'm nervous here. I am really, really nervous. I mean, I don't want to sell him short because I really like Drake May as a quarterback. I don't know what I want to say here because I want to give North Carolina the benefit of the doubt and say like this is a 10, like their ceiling is 10 wins, and especially if they come out, because it's highly possible they could come out 4-0 in those first 4 games. And you're right, playing Syracuse and playing Miami after that as well before the schedule kind of gets a little easier. It's possible, but they got to really do it early on and can't get behind the 8 ball. The other thing too is, let's say this stuff doesn't come together and the wheels fall off. This could be a 6-6 team. So I'm going to say my floor is 6-6. I'll say he's ceiling 10 wins.
And something else on top of it? Good teams usually compete with top 25 teams. Since 2019, so the past 4 years, they are 4-8 versus top 25 opponents.